Hello everyone, welcome back, and before we start today's review I just want to say a big thank you to everybody for 11,000 subscribers, which I passed that milestone just this week. Really grateful for that, and thank you so much to everyone who's subscribed, everyone who's commented, everyone who's watched the videos, and for all the support from the fragrance community. I've had so many supportive comments of congratulations, it means a lot to me. There was one comment that did surprise me a little bit, and that was from FragFan91, and he said, "Congrats on 11k, Mr. Smelly. I really enjoy your self-deprecating jokes." Now, I had a pretty bad bout of diarrhea last week, but I don't remember making any jokes about it. Okay, yes, so here we go, welcome back. So today we're going to be having a look at what for me I think has to be a 10 out of 10, a perfect 10 fragrance, Dior Eau Sauvage, first released in 1966. I have a vintage bottle here. The old style box there tells us it's an old one. It also doesn't have any barcode, which tells us I think it's pre-1991 or something when barcode codes had to start being used. And I've also got another little 50ml, that's 100ml splash Eau de Toilette, and similar box, but this one does have a barcode. So they're both vintage. And I'm going to be talking about the old formula. There is a new one that's out with a white box, same kind of lovely bottle design, and we'll have a little bit of talk about that, but I haven't got a bottle, I don't own one, so I can't do an in-depth comparison. So more on that subject later, but let's talk about the classic older formulas of Dior Eau Sauvage, which you can still find if you're careful. More on that subject later. And so here is a little bit more important information about this scent. Dior Eau Sauvage was first launched in 1966. It's a citrus aromatic fragrance, and the perfumer behind it was Edmund Rudnitska. The notes, according to Base Notes website, in the top we have lemon and rosemary, in the mid petitgrain and basil, and in the base we have vetiver. If you go on Fragrantica, it's a whole different story with a ton of other notes. They also include things like basil, bergamot, cumin, lavender, fruit, jasmine, rose, carnation, iris root, coriander, patchouli, sandalwood, oak moss, musk, and amber. I'm going to go with the base notes list as it gives you more of a description of what you can really smell in the fragrance. Some of the other stuff may be in there, but it's not so obvious. But I would say that oak moss is certainly a key ingredient in the vintage formula, and the fact that that has been largely removed, or maybe entirely removed from the modern version, is a key point of contention, which makes many people say that the fragrance is no longer what it once was. Indeed, Luca Turin has said that the whole heart of the fragrance has been ripped out post 2011. Luca Turin, the famous perfume critic. But more on that subject later. We're going to be just looking at a fairly vintage example that I've got here today, which should have most of the important stuff that made it what it was, including one other thing that's not mentioned in any note listing, a key ingredient though, hedione. Now, hedione has recently been shown by actual scientific research, I believe, to stimulate the part of women's brains responsible for sexual arousal. That's an actual fact, and that may indeed be why Steve McQueen, the famous actor from the 60s and 70s, famously attributed a lot of his success with women to his choice of Eau Sauvage as his signature scent. That makes the fragrance of particular interest to me at the moment, because whatever fragrances I've been wearing lately seem to stimulate the part of women's brains responsible for disapproval, disappointment, anger and contempt. So certainly a popular scent, and it's often, as we can see from the adverts there, being marketed as a sexy scent, something that's going to make you attractive to women. Some people have said Robes8's review on this one, there aren't many reviews, but Robes8 has done it, and Joy Amin, and Robes8 said he felt it's a bit dated. So it's from the 60s, it's a citrus cologne type fragrance. Maybe it's a bit simple. Some people are not going to necessarily find it that interesting compared to what's out there today. However, I think if you really spend some time with this one, it's got complexity, it's got depth. If you're lucky enough to find a vintage example, I think this is a really, really classic and important fragrance. So let's get into a little bit more of my in-depth description of what I get from this fragrance. Okay, so yeah, there's some important information about the history of this one, and now let's just talk about why I like it so much. So I've got little bit of dry down on both hands. I've been wearing it as my scent of the day, but I'm going to spray a fresh one on there just to get some top notes. And yeah, what it has, this fragrance, is just this beautiful, lovely, almost perfect citrus opening, which is lemon, bergamot spring to mind to me, but it doesn't seem that it just smells of lemons and or bergamot or oranges and limes. It's definitely tempered with some herbal elements in there straight from the off, and a really just exquisite accord which is recognisable instantly as Dior's Eau Sauvage, and that's what I love about it. It's as if when you spray it, and as the fragrance goes on, it's as if everything in there is just in perfect equilibrium. The balance of a nice citrus element that's never too sharp, a certain sweetness. Maybe there is some lavender in here. There's certainly, to me, it reminds me of sherbet lemon. So you've got the lemon, the sharp citric element, but also there's this sweetness and smoothness about the scent. And I think the whatever herbal accords they've used in there, basil and rosemary are talked about in this one, they've really just done them in such a clever, exquisite way that it just balances out that sharpness, the citrus element, maybe the sweetness is in there with these sort of green herbal accords. And then in the base, the woodiness, the vetiver, gives it a really nice masculine undertone that keeps it away from being a sort of overly floral, grandma-ish kind of citrus smell. It's got more to it than things like 4711, the classic citrus cologne. It really was almost the perfection of the genre of the citrus cologne, I think, when they made this one, and everything that's come since. There have been loads of other great ones that I really enjoy, but nothing's ever really bettered this. The different smells that I enjoy in a way just as much, but if I'm just looking for that classic all-around go-to scent that a man can wear to smell clean, fresh, and a little bit interesting, then I think Dior's Eau Sauvage from 1966 really achieves that with fantastic skill. The longevity on this one is my old formula, of course. It may not be the same with the modern version. I do find it lasts really quite well, and I wore it last night. I woke up this morning, I could still definitely smell that nice kind of musky, woody, subtle but yet present masculine scent on my hand where I had sprayed it. So it has really nice longevity. I don't think that it's ever really projecting massively strongly, so it's a reasonably refined but perhaps slightly understated scent. I don't find it's nothing like beast mode. It's good, nice, appropriate sillage, but it never really jumps out and fills a room. As you would probably expect with a citrus aromatic scent, they don't tend to be that strong. So it's moderate, I would perfectly acceptable and good in projection for the kind of scent that it is, with a nice longevity. So a good, appropriate kind of performance, but if you are insisting on a really strong, powerful scent to get you noticed, then this might not be the best choice. So other reasons that this one is nice is that it is a very classic, elegant and refined scent. It has an air of sophistication, more so than you're going to get with modern alternatives. So if we take, for example, Dior's Sauvage, as opposed to Eau Sauvage, a completely different scent, that also is very fresh. It's a little bit more powerful actually, and a little bit more noticeable, and something about it smells a bit modern, but maybe just a bit cocky, a bit in your face, which you might want, but it doesn't have that air of refinement and subtlety that this one does. And when I say subtlety, I mean subtlety in refinement in the scent. It can still be smelled. It's there. You will be smelled, and you will smell classy. It's a very versatile scent as well. You can wear it really in any occasion. It perhaps would lean more towards spring and summer wearings. I put it in a top 10 spring list, I think, last year, but it's really an all-rounder. It could be a signature scent. You can wear it any time of year, daytime or nighttime. Any time is the right time. It's a classic scent that is timeless. It has a certain retro feel, but none of the sort of mustiness, or if you have scents that are heavy in oak moss, sometimes that can make them smell a bit dated to the 70s and 80s. Oak moss is apparently a key ingredient in perhaps giving this one a little bit of longevity, but it doesn't have a really mossy, ferny, old-fashioned, it's not really a fougere, it doesn't have that old-fashioned smell. It smells really the absolute epitome of what I would call a timeless scent, and that's why I love it so much. So we can see the bottle here is just a brilliant design. I love the way that the old bottle looks there. This one's a splash, this one's a sprayer. It doesn't have the magnetic cap. If you get a new version, magnetic cap, that's one of the ways you can tell it's the more modern formula, and that one will not come in the brown box but the white one. And I've sprayed that one in the shop, and I do definitely recognise the modern version as being the same scent. I haven't done an in-depth analysis, so I'm not going to give you the real lowdown on that, but I would say that the modern one may be just doesn't quite grab me in the same way. It's as if they've sort of taken a snapshot of that and reduced it to one kind of digitized accord similar to the old Eau Sauvage, but it doesn't seem to have the herbs bouncing off there, and the development, as I've worn it a couple of times having sprayed it in the shop, it seems a little bit more one-dimensional and just a very nice citrusy woody smell. This one seems to have a little bit more going on there, but that could partly be in my mind. So I don't think the reformulation is quite as disastrous as Luca Turin seems to think, and it's definitely worth checking out the modern version in the shops. But if you can get an old one, I think it's definitely better. Mine have stood up fine, they've been in boxes. It's as if they were just made yesterday when I've opened them. What you've got to look out for then, you want the brown box like that if it has a box. If it's like that, it's going to be more difficult to tell, but if they list it as vintage, then you maybe can ask some questions. If it's a non-magnetic cap, I think that's a good sign. If the box doesn't have a barcode, it's definitely pretty old. There's also another design of bottle that's going to look something like that, and they are definitely vintage, and that should be a really good formula. And unfortunately, there was a kind of a bit naff looking bottle with a plastic lid that was around for a while, I think in the 80s. But again, the smell of that juice, I don't like the bottle so much, but that should be definitely vintage. And they crop up on eBay quite a bit because this scent was really popular. Loads and loads of them were made, so it's not one that's hyped up or where people are likely to be selling it for ridiculous prices. Well, I have seen some people taking the mickey a bit with their prices on eBay, but probably if you're keen to get one, you hang in there for a month or two, you can find an old vintage formula for a reasonable price. Mine were both in the sort of £20–25 range for 50ml and 100ml respectively, which is a really great lucky bargain. Even, you know, anything up to £50–60, probably worth it, certainly for the 100ml. So for me, an absolute classic citrus aromatic scent. Nothing has ever quite bettered it, although I love loads of other citrus aromatic fragrances, and rightfully one that is regarded as a classic. I think I forgot to mention Roger Dove even said that this one was, what did he say, one of the great miracles of modern perfumery, and he described Hedio in that note that's supposed to be attracting the ladies as a perfumer's dream. So yeah, definitely a real classic, highly rated by many modern perfumers. Other things you might try for a similar thing, I really find that Hubigant's Cologne Intense, which I've done a review on, reminds me a lot actually of Dior Eau Sauvage in that classic citrus cologne style with a little bit of depth and character to it. So if I wasn't able to get this and I was in the mood to wear it, I didn't have it to hand, but I had this great substitute, and a bit different, but the one that most reminds me of classic Dior Eau Sauvage in my collection is this one. So 10 out of 10, absolutely for me, the old version. Let me know what you think. Have you got an old version? Do you have the modern one? How does that perform? Do I need to do an in-depth comparison? Maybe I will. As ever, thanks very much for watching, and remember, whatever we're doing in life, let's project. I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.